Hi, I'm Rachna Vyas. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland Integrated Care Board.
Hi, I'm Roger Kline. I'm a Research Fellow at Middlesex University, and I do research and work with organisations and groups within the health service around culture, workforce culture in the health service.
Hello, I'm Professor Ivan Browne. I'm a former Director of Public Health. I am currently a Professor of Public Health at De Montfort University in Leicester, and I also sit as a non-executive on our local hospital trust.
Hi, I'm Sandra Goatley, and I'm the Chief People Officer at the Kent and Medway Mental Health NHS Trust.
And hi, I'm MaryAnn Farreux. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Health Innovation Kent, Surrey and Sussex, and I'm also a Non-Exec Director at Kent Community Trust and Kent Mental Health Trust.
Hello and welcome to this feature podcast, a three-part series exploring some of the most topical challenges facing the inclusion agenda today. My name is Sylvia Stevenson and I'm the Director of Absolute Diversity. Well, this series is about facing the inclusion agenda exactly as it is, complex, uncomfortable, and dare I say, urgent. We're building on the Black History Month theme, which, as you may remember, is standing firm in power and resilience, because now more than ever, we need unapologetic truth-telling and honest debate. Well, you've already met our panel and they're anxious to get started, as am I. In this first series, we're going to be focusing on the power of our story. I will be starting with a live topic, the debate surrounding the St. George's flag. Well, let's get started. So what message is the St. George's flag sending, intentionally or not?
Thanks, Sylvia. So, as being part of the global majority, I'm from a heritage where we've got strong Kenyan influence and a strong Indian influence. So the flag has always been an incredibly important symbol of kind of where you come from. My children, of course, both born here, so only know the British flag and the St. George's Cross, actually. And so we've got a real mix in my household about how everybody is reacting to what is happening. There is a clear divisiveness. I think we have to call that out in terms of the elephant in the room, in terms of how the current usage of the flag is being portrayed in our streets. I think when we talk to our colleagues who are working in the NHS, who come from, of course, the most wonderfully diverse backgrounds that you could hope for, it's quite scary for people. They are out there. They are seen as a symbol of divisiveness, when actually they should be a symbol to bring us together, regardless of what your thought process, what your politics, what your heritage. We are here in England, where we are a mix of communities. I'm in the Midlands. I can walk through one of our biggest streets in the city that I live in. There are 100 different languages spoken. There are flags of all sorts, all natures actually up, and it's the community helping the community. And when we actually stop to talk to some people about what does the St. George's flag mean to them, actually I think they can't explain it. So when we're talking about, wanting somewhere safe for your family, you want to be able to feed your family, you want to be able to grow up in a safe environment, all of that is actually what the flag should mean to each of us, but it's not. It's different, it's divisive, and it's being used for a purpose for which it was not intended. And I think it's a real shame. But on the flip side, I think it's up to us to grab that narrative back and actually say we are proud of it. We're proud of it, and we are proud to use it in the way it was intended, as opposed to the purposes that it's currently being used for.
And I'm going to go over to Dr. MaryAnn because there seems to be an assumption that the St. George's flag is not a good thing. It's actually quite negative. What are your thoughts on that? What would you say to people who say, actually, that is my country's flag and I am proud to be flying it. It's got nothing to do with racism or any kind of negative undertone. What's your experience and what would you say to somebody?
Yeah, I think having got a huge amount of flags where I live, every street, every lamppost on every street has the Great British flag, and some individual houses have the St. George flag in a similar way to what I used to see in America, which is, they feel quite patriotic towards their flag. I'd been away on holiday and came back, and I actually thought there'd been some kind of sporting game, or, I thought, oh, who's won the World Cup? Have we, is that why normally the flags are out as a celebration of our country because we've done something amazing? It was only after I saw the news and saw these anti-immigrant protests that had happened that it dawned on me that actually the flag has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by a movement that I haven't signed up for, and actually many people across the community haven't signed up for. And that makes me really, really sad that there are people within the community that don't want somebody who, looks like me to live there. And it also makes me feel really unsafe. And so therefore, how do our staff feel when they come into work as well? And it feels like we're all sort of walking on eggshells, not really being able to talk about it in case we make someone feel uncomfortable. But, the reality is many of us are walking around, with that unease every single day. And it can be quite frightening. So, I think it's really important that the leaders especially recognize the impact that this is having on people. Our staff are our community, they work in our communities, and be able to support them through this time. And even just small things like, so I was feeling quite down about it the other day, and I had this lovely email sent through to me from a very senior researcher from the university who said, MaryAnn, I'm sending you this, a link so that you can sign our petition to the council to get the flags taken down. And he's from a white background, and he said, I've got all of my neighbours to all sign this. We've really got to make sure it happens. And actually, that was something that really uplifted me at that time. It really made me feel actually this isn't everybody. This is a small proportion of people that feel a certain way, but actually the large majority of people are really supportive and do want to make change happen.
I think for me, it's how the flags, what's the intention behind the flag? How are those flags being used? I've grown up, I was born in Leicester, I'm in my home city. Rachna and I both coexist here happily. And part of the reason why we coexist here is it is the most diverse city in the country. It feels great. And everywhere I've gone away and studied, I've come back here because it feels like home. So I'm not scared of the flag of St. George, but it's the way that it gets used. So for me, it feels like it is not about patriotism. It feels like it's marking territory. It's about saying, okay, why is it on every flag? Why would you put it on multiple flag lampposts going down a street? It's not about patriotism. That's like marking the territory. Okay, this belongs to me. And this belongs to me. I think it's interesting that it's not the Union flag that we're seeing the proliferance of. It's interesting that we're seeing the flag of St. George. Mm-hmm. Very much that flag has historically been kind of linked with the whole idea of conquest and the Crusades and all of those things that almost tries to say it's that England. It's not this union, it's that England. So I think that I think what you'll find there is you'll have a number of people there that are seeing it as a way of saying, okay, this is my country, or this is my nationalism. But there is a group there that are going beyond that. So I think it's what the intention is, how it's being used, and I do feel that it's about marking territory to exclude, and that is anathema to what I've grown up with. It takes me back to points in the sort of 1970s when people were trying to march down the streets, and to be honest, places like Leicester were very resistant to that, and I'm hoping that we will continue to be resistant to that. And it's interesting where we're seeing the flags in our city. They're in areas where we know historically have been, areas that are, potentially a lot more right wing than other parts of the city. So, for me, it's the marking territory thing that I see it as a problem.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with people at sporting events waving flags relating to the country that's playing. My kids have done it. I'm sure I've done it in my past. Nothing wrong with people, for example, on Remembrance Sunday, walking along in their Scouts group or whatever it is behind a Union Jack flag. But this is about the motives of those who are encouraging such massive use of flags. And I thought Gary Neville, the Manchester United and England footballer, put it very well when he said, I want these flags taken down on the buildings where I'm building some houses because they're a symbol of division, not a symbol of unity. I thought that was quite good way of doing it.
So I was saying that the British flag has always been important to me because I grew up in a British Army family. My dad was in the British Army, and it was always a significant thing for us. And when I've seen flags in the past in people's gardens or wherever, because there's somebody here locally here who flies a flag, I've never thought anything about it. I've never thought that was for any reason other than positive. And now I feel real discomfort in what I see. So there's a road not far from me, which won't be far from you, MaryAnn, where I drive down the road, and it's not a street, it's a main road, and every single post has a flag on it. And then I talk to the staff at work who are feeling fear. We've recruited lots of international nurses and they feel fear now. This was their dream. And this dream is turning really sour really quick. And so I feel real discomfort now with what I see, and I'm not proud to see that flag anymore.
How proactive have organisations really been in addressing the issues of the flags, especially for staff who work in the community and go into people's homes?
I don't think they've been proactive at all, Sylvia. I think most organisations, one thing is most organisations are so tied up with the current stresses in the health service, they haven't really culture in the way they should generally. But I think there's a kind of anxiety and nervousness, not least because there's no clear direction coming down from London as to what is expected of organisations. In the riots, the racist riots of 2024, there was a very clear circular from NHS England, which not every trust acted on, but which lots did, which gave a set of things that organisations were expected or encouraged to do. I've seen nothing like that in the current environment. So that's not to let off local leaderships, but it's an awful lot easier if there's a national steer coming on these things.
But Roger, why should there have to be a national directive to protect the people who are coming to work every single day for your trust? So I completely hear you when you're saying that it's easier, much easier when there's a national mandate and a national letter and all the things that provide air cover for local leadership. But there is something about standing up and saying, this is happening in our area, it is not okay, and here are the steps we are taking to either support staff or protect, or whichever way you want to do things. I've got community nurses at the moment going into streets that were described by Sandra and MaryAnn, which are full of St. George's flags, which they don't understand why. And because they don't understand why, and the intent that you and Ivan were talking about, they're deeply uncomfortable and worried about their own safety. But not one trust has gone out and openly said, this is happening in our city and let's explore it together. It's only when we have those conversations and we talk about it that actually something surfaces about the why bit. And when we understand the why, we generally understand then what to do about it. We haven't even done that. And so there is something about that local leadership level, which actually sometimes you need to say, stop, And we did the same, as you just referenced in the riots. Leicester was hit pretty badly in that sense, but it was local leadership who stood up and said, actually, this is not what we are. We're not taking this. We're not dealing with this in the way that you want us to. These are the steps that we are taking to protect our citizens. And there is something about that, I think, which is more powerful for staff when they know that there's not air cover. And that's, I think, something that we really should think about for future, about what are we going to do in the next couple of weeks, months, years, to then talk about getting back to a balance as opposed to this polarization.
And I think you talked about a really good point there, because it is, for me, it's about leadership. And there's a range of leaders, as there are, but overwhelmingly, the leadership across the NHS is of a certain demographic, if we're going to be honest. And I don't think that everyone either wants to do something, or they feel this is an excuse not to do anything because, it's too political, or it's too hard, we best not say anything. And, although I agree with you, Roger, I do think having something from the centre can actually help force those where they're not convinced, if I'm going to be honest. I spend a lot of my time doing hearts and minds in the leadership space at NHS boards. Not everybody's convinced there's a problem. And if they do know there's a problem, they don't necessarily want to do anything about the problem. They're quite happy to see it as somebody else's issue to try and sort out. And I do think there's something about having that national steer to say, no, these are the expectations and you need to do it. In an ideal world, I absolutely agree with Rachna. The leadership's just got to do it. But, particularly the local leadership that know their people and know the communities and are best to be able to shape that conversation and have that communication with their staff. But, unfortunately, if you look at the demographics of a lot of sort of NHS boards and executive teams, they're not particularly diverse. So, so that the issues that are happening for their frontline staff, where it's, a huge amount of diversity that sit in much lower paid jobs, are just not being heard and acted upon.
Yeah, I was going to say, make no mistake about this. Those that feel, whatever walk of life we are in our organisation, those of us that feel that this environment is being targeted at us are watching closely. They might not be in a position where they feel they can articulate it, or they have got the ears that they need to hear. But what is happening is they are watching our organisations closely. You find out more about what an organisation is and what an organisation is doing in times of crisis or difficulty than you will ever find out when everything's good. When everything's good, we're all happy, everybody's good, and we care about everybody, and we'll have lots and lots of innovations to make sure that everybody feels loved. But what you really want to know is, will you stand up in those difficult times? I had this saying that I used to have throughout COVID when I was leading, never waste a crisis. We're in a crisis, never waste the crisis. I think organisations here are wasting a crisis in the sense that this is the moment where your voice, if you stand up today, that voice will be heard more clearly than it will ever have been heard if you'd have stood up a few years ago. That's the time. And so the question that really comes back is, why are organisations not willing to do that? What is their concern? And we know that there's a political pressure that might sit behind that. I don't know. I think there is something around people thinking that that's not the day job, when actually this is the day job. This is your community. This is what it's about. So I think there is something about I've sort of said around certain tables that I've been around, right, this is the time, right? This is the moment where if you're talking about those things around being inclusive, feeling that your organisation has the pulse of your community, this is the moment to be able to do it. But you're going to have to stand up to do it. And that means that some people might not be happy about it. But actually, if we're saying that rights, social justice, equity, those things are important to us, this is the time.
So as we close part 1, I want to emphasize something powerful we heard today. Never waste a crisis. Now, more than ever, this is the time to make your voice heard. Now, I know that this work isn't easy, and I often say that the inclusion agenda is not for the faint-hearted. So we need leaders to stand up and be counted, because today we heard real stories from leaders who are affected by what is happening today. And what's interesting to remember is that we are all in this together, regardless of culture, background, gender, however we identify. So join us in part 2, where we'll go even deeper and ask an essential question. How safe and supported do senior leaders feel in speaking openly about sensitive and uncomfortable issues such as we've discussed today? And can they do this without the fear or risk of being cancelled? So join us next time, because we're standing firm in power, and resilience is how we continue to change culture. Thank you for listening.